Stay with me tonight. Dying billionaire heiress calls single dad by mistake. Then he showed up. The call came in the quietest hour of the night, when the city itself seemed to be holding its breath, when streetlights hummed softly, and even the stars looked tired. A dying billionaire heiress, alone in a mansion too big for her pain, reached for her phone with trembling fingers and pressed the first name her blurry vision could see. She whispered 3 words into the darkness, not knowing who was on the other end, not knowing she had dialed the wrong number, not knowing that a single exhausted father was about to step into her final chapter. Stay with me tonight. In that moment, 2 broken lives, worlds apart, collided by accident, and nothing that followed would ever be the same. If you believe that kindness still matters, that second chances can change destinies, and that one small decision can alter an entire life, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what being human truly means. Ethan Cole had been awake long before the phone rang. Sleep rarely came easily anymore. His nights were measured by the gentle rise and fall of his 6-year-old daughter's chest as she slept beside him on a mattress that squeaked with every movement. The apartment was small, the paint chipped, the air heavy with the smell of reheated soup and laundry detergent. Life had shrunk since his wife's passing, collapsing inward until it was just him, his child, and the constant fear of not being enough. He worked days as a delivery driver, nights fixing broken appliances for neighbors who paid in cash and gratitude. Every dollar mattered. Every mistake felt fatal. When his phone buzzed on the cracked nightstand, his first thought was that something had gone wrong with his daughter. His heart jumped before his hand even moved. The voice he heard was soft, fragile, like glass about to shatter. It carried exhaustion deeper than physical illness, a loneliness so heavy it pressed against his chest even through the phone. Ethan did not know who she was. He did not hear a name, an explanation, or a demand. Only fear wrapped in dignity, and a request so simple it hurt. His instinct was to hang up, to assume it was a prank or a mistake. But years of caring for a child alone had tuned him to distress the way sailors sense storms. Something in that voice felt final. He stayed on the line, listening, grounding her with his presence, telling her she was not alone, even as confusion swirled in his mind. Across the city, Eleanor Whitmore lay in a bed worth more than Ethan's entire building. The walls around her were decorated with art collected from all over the world, yet none of it could comfort her now. The machines monitoring her heartbeat blinked steadily, indifferent to her fear. She had been rich her entire life, surrounded by people who wanted something from her, advisors, caretakers, distant relatives who smiled too widely. But in her final weeks, as her illness stripped away her strength, the mansion had grown unbearably silent. The nurse had stepped out. The family was unavailable. Panic had set in, and she had reached for the phone like a lifeline. When Ethan didn't hang up, something inside her loosened. She spoke not of wealth, but of memories, regrets, the ache of never having been loved for who she truly was. Ethan listened as if it were his own mother speaking. He said little, but his silence was the kind that held space rather than pushing it away. Minutes turned into an hour. The night deepened. At some point, Eleanor asked where he was, and Ethan realized the gravity of the situation. She was alone, truly alone. The thought gnawed at him. He looked at his daughter, sleeping, at the threadbare blanket, at the unpaid bills on the table. He had no obligation to a stranger, especially one living in unimaginable luxury. Yet the memory of hospital hallways, of holding his wife's hand as machines beeped and strangers avoided eye contact, rose up like a tide. He knew what it meant to face the end without warmth. By dawn, Ethan had made a decision that made no logical sense. He left his daughter with a trusted neighbor, scribbled a note he hoped would be enough, and followed the address Eleanor gave him. The gates of the estate rose like something out of a dream, tall and cold, guarded by security who looked at his worn jacket with suspicion. His name wasn't on any list. He didn't belong there. But Eleanor had insisted, and eventually the doors opened. As Ethan walked through halls lined with marble and echoes, he felt smaller with every step, a man from a world of scarcity entering a palace of excess. Yet none of it mattered when he saw her. Eleanor was thinner than her photographs suggested, her skin pale, her eyes sharp with intelligence despite the fatigue. She looked at Ethan not with entitlement, but with relief, as if he were a lighthouse in a storm she had already accepted would sink her. There was no grand conversation, no dramatic confession. They spoke of ordinary things. He told her about his daughter's love for coloring books and pancakes. She told him about a childhood spent in boarding schools, of parents who provided everything except affection. Time slowed in that room, and for the first time in weeks, Eleanor slept peacefully, knowing someone was there not because they were paid, but because they chose to be. Days turned into a routine neither of them had expected. Ethan visited after work, sometimes bringing his daughter when Eleanor felt strong enough. The mansion filled with small sounds it had not known in years, laughter, crayons scratching paper, the soft chaos of life. Eleanor's staff watched in quiet astonishment as their employer smiled more, demanded less, softened. Ethan never asked for anything. He fixed a loose drawer, replaced a flickering bulb, small gestures. That came naturally to him. In return, Eleanor gave him something money had never bought her before, trust. But reality pressed in as it always does. Eleanor's condition worsened. Ethan's exhaustion grew. He missed shifts, turned down extra jobs. Friends warned him not to get involved, not to be pulled into the orbit of a dying billionaire. Rumors began to circulate among Eleanor's relatives, whispers of manipulation, of a poor man circling an inheritance. The tension thickened, threatening to shatter the fragile peace they had built. Ethan felt it acutely, the weight of judgment, the fear that his presence might cause Eleanor more harm than comfort. Yet every time he considered stepping back, he remembered that first call, that raw plea for company, and he stayed. In her final days, Eleanor asked for nothing extravagant. She did not want another specialist flown in, another experimental treatment. She wanted normalcy. She wanted to watch cartoons with a child, to hear stories about school projects, to feel human rather than legendary. Ethan gave her that gift even as his own heart began to fracture in anticipation of loss. He held her hand as the room grew quiet, not as an employee or beneficiary, but as someone who had been there when it mattered most. Before the end came, Eleanor made arrangements without fanfare. No dramatic reveal, no announcement, just signatures, quiet conversations, and a final sense of peace. When she passed, the city mourned a billionaire. Headlines spoke of her fortune, her legacy, her philanthropy. Ethan returned to his small apartment, numb, believing his role in her life was a footnote no one would ever read. Weeks later, a letter arrived, then another and another. Ethan discovered that Eleanor had seen him more clearly than anyone ever had. She had not left him her empire, but she had changed his life nonetheless. His daughter's education was secured, a modest home was paid for, a foundation was established in Eleanor's name with... Ethan asked to help guide it, not because he was qualified on paper, but because he understood compassion in ways boardrooms never would. The whispers faded, replaced by quiet respect. As Ethan tucked his daughter into her own bed for the first time, sunlight streaming through a window that belonged to them, he thought about how close he had come to ignoring that call, how easily he could have chosen sleep over empathy. Eleanor's voice echoed not as a plea anymore, but as a reminder that even the richest lives can be unbearably lonely, and even the poorest hearts can be full enough to save someone else. If this story has reached something deep inside you, if it reminded you of a moment when kindness changed your path or someone else's, please take a second now to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can continue to find the people who need them most. And before this video ends, leave a comment telling us whether you believe that some calls are not mistakes, but quiet invitations from fate itself.